Hello, friends. This is Emily, and today I want to share a story that may change how you see success. We often think success comes early in life, when we are young, strong, and full of energy. But what if your big break comes much later, after decades of failure and disappointment? Would you still believe in yourself and keep trying when the world tells you to stop? This is not just theory. It is the real journey of Colonel Harland Sanders, the man behind KFC. He lost jobs, faced rejections, and lived through poverty. But he never gave up. At the age of 62, when most people think of retirement, he began building a global empire. His story is more than about fried chicken. It is about resilience, belief, and courage. So sit back, listen closely, and let's explore what his journey can teach us about never giving up. Let's begin at the very start of Colonel Sanders' life. Long before the white suit, before the empire, he was just a little boy. He was born in 1890 in Indiana, USA, to a working family with very modest means. Life seemed simple at first, but fate quickly turned his world upside down. When Harlan was just 5 years old, tragedy struck. His father passed away suddenly. For a child that young, losing a parent is more than heartbreak. It changes everything. His father had been the main support of the family, the one who provided food and security. After his death, his mother had to leave home for long hours to earn a living. That meant little Harlan had to step into a role far bigger than his age. He became the caretaker for his younger brother and sister. Instead of toys and games, he had pots, pans, and a stove in front of him. This is how he first learned to cook. He was barely tall enough to reach the counter, yet he stood on a stool to stir food. He experimented with recipes, often guided by his mother's simple instructions. Cooking was survival, but also a spark of passion he never realized at the time. By the age of 7, Harlan was already working on a farm. Imagine a child waking at dawn, feeding animals, carrying heavy loads, doing hard labor. While most children played freely, he was learning responsibility and resilience. His childhood had no holidays, no leisure, only work and survival. But these challenges planted seeds of strength and independence within him. His mother eventually remarried, but life did not become easier. The man she chose was abusive, especially toward Harland. The home that should have been safe became a place of fear and pain. At only 12, Harlan made a heartbreaking decision. He packed a small bag and left home, never to return. He had no clear plan, no guidance, only the desire to escape cruelty. He slept in barns, on benches, wherever he could find shelter. He worked small jobs for coins, cleaning, carrying water, doing anything to survive. For a young boy, this was a dangerous path. But he had courage beyond his years. He refused to let pain destroy him. He refused to let circumstances define his future. Every rejection, every hardship, built a spirit that refused to break. What we often miss when we look at success is the story behind it. We see fame, money, achievement, but rarely the pain that shaped the person. Colonel Sanders' early life is a lesson that greatness often grows from struggle. He didn't inherit wealth, status, or privilege. He inherited hardship, and he turned it into strength. He learned skills not in a classroom, but in kitchens and fields. He discovered resilience not from books, but from survival itself. Running away at 12 seemed like tragedy, but it was the first step to freedom. His early years were full of hardship, but they forged his independence. They shaped his persistence, his courage, and his belief in himself. If you are going through a tough time now, think of young Harland. He faced more pain before age 15 than many face in a lifetime. Yet he never let that pain defeat him. Instead, he used it to grow stronger, to build character, to prepare for the future. This is the hidden foundation of the man we later call Colonel Sanders. The lesson here is simple. Life may be unfair, harsh, and painful. But within those trials lies the chance to develop strength. Every obstacle can shape you into someone greater. Harlan's story reminds us that even the darkest beginnings can lead to bright destinies. Now let's move into the next chapter of Harlan Sanders' life. After leaving home at only 12, he stepped into a world full of trials. No money, no family support, and no education to guide his way forward. Yet he carried something powerful within him, the will to keep going. But the road ahead was not smooth. He faced one disappointment after another. Over the years, he worked in more than 20 different jobs. Each time he believed maybe this job would be the one. But time after time, the outcome was the same: failure. His first job was as a streetcar conductor. He collected fares and wore a uniform, but soon he was fired. Next, he became a firefighter, a dangerous but honorable role. He thought he found purpose, but it ended quickly. Then he joined the U.S. Army and served briefly in Cuba. Even the military did not provide him a long-term future. Each attempt ended with loss, rejection, or dismissal. He tried working as a salesman, going door to door selling products, tires, lamps, insurance policies. He tried them all. Some days he sold a few items, but most days doors slammed in his face. Imagine the courage it takes to be rejected again and again. Yet he kept knocking on doors, kept chasing the hope of stability. He also tried work as a railroad laborer, a steamboat operator, even a legal assistant. Nothing seemed to last. Each time he thought he was building a career, it slipped away. Most people would have quit after so many failures. They would have said, maybe I'm not good. Enough. Maybe I'll never succeed. But Harlan refused to define himself as a failure. He saw himself as a man still searching for the right path. Every rejection, every dismissal, became a lesson to him. He learned about people, business, and resilience through these jobs. Even if he was broke, even if he was lost, he kept his fire alive. This stage of his life is often overlooked, but it carries great wisdom. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of success. Each attempt that didn't work out prepared him for something greater. By failing, he was learning how to stand stronger. By being fired, he was discovering his persistence. By losing jobs, he was gaining perspective. Harlan Sanders lived in small rooms, often with little food. He moved from town to town, searching for opportunities. He was broke more often than not, yet he did not surrender. What others saw as wasted years were actually years of training. Training not in classrooms, but in the school of life. Most people after 20 failures would stop. But Harlan taught us that true persistence begins after everyone else has quit. His courage was not about instant victory. It was about showing up again and again, even when life pushed him down. Think about it. How many times have you failed and felt it was over? How many times did you want to quit after one rejection? Harlan's story shows that rejection is not a final answer. It is a challenge, an invitation to try again. He faced failures in more than 20 jobs, yet he never gave up. And these failures were not wasted. They shaped his spirit. They gave him the mindset that would one day create an empire. The lesson here is clear. Failing does not mean you are a failure. It means you are still on the path, still searching for your true calling. Every job that ended badly was another step toward his destiny. So when life shuts a door, remember Harlan Sanders. He reminds us that failure is not the end of the story. It is simply the beginning of a new chapter waiting to be written. Now we arrive at a turning point in Harlan Sanders' journey. By the time he reached 40, he had failed more than most people would face in a lifetime. He had been fired from jobs, rejected in sales, and left broke again and again. Yet deep inside, he still carried belief in himself. he still dreamed that one day things could change. At 40, he decided to take a bold step. He opened his own business. In Corbin, Kentucky, Sanders opened a small petrol station. It was not glamorous, and he didn't have much money to start with. But this time, he was his own boss. And for the first time, he leaned into something that came from his heart. Remember, he had learned to cook as a child to feed his siblings. Over the years, he had developed a unique recipe for fried chicken. It was seasoned with a blend of herbs and spices that no one else used. Friends and visitors often said the same thing. This chicken is amazing. So Sanders had an idea. Why not serve food at the petrol station? At first, it was simple. Just a small kitchen at the back, a few tables for guests. There was no big sign, no advertisement, only Harland and his chicken. He called it Sanders Court and Cafe. To his surprise, customers started coming, not just for petrol, but for the food. Word spread quickly. Families drove in just to taste his chicken. Truck drivers planned their routes so they could stop at his cafe. People loved the food. And for the first time, Sanders felt real success. His business was more than a station. It became a community place. Laughter, meals, and conversations filled the small cafe. Sanders felt pride. All the failures and hardships seemed to lead to this. Finally, he had found something he was truly good at. Business was booming. He even started to dream of expansion, of building more restaurants. For once, the future looked bright. But life has its own way of testing people. One day, devastating news arrived. The government planned to build a new highway, bypassing the town of Corbin. Traffic that once brought travelers to his cafe would now flow elsewhere. Slowly, customers stopped coming. Day by day, the tables emptied. The cafe that had been full of joy and energy turned quiet. Sanders tried to stay hopeful, but the decline was irreversible. Eventually, he was forced to shut down the business. It was a crushing blow. After years of failure, he had finally built something successful, and it was taken away, not by mistake, not by poor effort, but by circumstances beyond control. At 40 years old, he was once again back to zero. Most people would have given up completely. They would have said, "It's over. I tried, and I failed again." But Sanders saw something different. He realized his recipe had value. The customers had loved his chicken. The failure was not about his food, but about the location. And that gave him hope. Even though he lost his cafe, he did not lose his dream. This chapter of his life carries an important lesson. Sometimes you can do everything right and still face failure. Life is not always fair. But success is not about never falling. It is about rising again after every fall. Sanders' first real business ended in failure, but his belief stayed alive. He still trusted his recipe, and more importantly, he still trusted himself. This was not the end of his journey. It was only another chapter preparing him for something greater. Little did he know, his greatest breakthrough was yet to come. Let's continue with the next stage of Harland Sanders' story. After losing his cafe to the new highway, many people would have quit. But Sanders was not ready to stop. He had tasted success, and he knew his recipe was special. So he decided to try again. He opened another restaurant in a new location, determined to rebuild. Slowly, customers began to notice him once more. But then, tragedy struck again. A fire broke out and destroyed everything he had built. The restaurant, the kitchen, the equipment, all gone in one night. Imagine the heartbreak of watching your dream burn to ashes. At this point, Sanders was already in his 50s. Most people around him said it was time to give up. But inside, he carried a deep love for cooking and serving others. He refused to let circumstances end his journey. With no restaurant and very little money, he turned to a new idea. He would not just cook chicken himself. He would share his recipe with other restaurants. He packed his pressure cooker and his blend of spices into his old car. Then he traveled from town to town, knocking on doors. His pitch was simple: cook chicken my way, sell it to your customers, and pay me a small fee. It was the early form of what we now call franchising. But at the time, most people did not understand it. Restaurant owners turned him away. One said no, then another, then another. In fact, Sanders was rejected over 1,000 times. Yes, more than 1,000 doors closed in his face. Can you imagine the weight of hearing no again and again? Most people can barely survive a few rejections before quitting. But Sanders was different. Every no made him stronger. Every rejection fueled his determination to keep going. He understood that failure was not final. He believed that success could be just one more try away. So he kept driving, kept cooking, kept knocking. Until finally, one restaurant owner said yes. That yes changed everything. Once customers tasted the chicken, they loved it. Other restaurants started to notice. Soon, the recipe began to spread. But remember this: it all started with persistence. Sanders was not rich, not young, not powerful. What he had was belief in himself and the courage to continue. This stage of his life is a powerful lesson. Persistence does not mean everything will go smoothly. It means moving forward when nothing goes your way. It means trusting the journey even when results are not visible. It means believing in the dream even when the world says no. Sanders failed in over 20 jobs. He lost his businesses. His restaurant burned down. He was rejected 1,000 times. And still, he did not stop. He kept moving forward, one step at a time. That persistence is the foundation of every great success. So the next time you feel ready to quit, remember Sanders. Remember the man who faced rejection after rejection, yet refused to surrender. Success is often just one more step beyond the point where others give up. His story reminds us that persistence is not optional. It is the bridge between failure and success. And it was persistence that carried him toward the empire he would soon create. Now let's enter one of the most powerful chapters in Sanders' story. By the time he reached 62, life seemed like a series of failures. He had lost jobs, seen businesses close, and watched his dreams fall apart. He was living on a small government check, nearly broke. At an age when many people retire, Sanders was still searching for hope. But deep inside, he held on to one thing: his chicken recipe. It was no ordinary recipe. It carried the flavor of years of trial, testing, and passion. A unique blend of 11 herbs and spices made it unforgettable. People who tasted it always asked for more. Sanders believed this recipe had real value. But how could he turn it into success without a restaurant or money? That's when a bold idea came to him. He would sell the recipe itself. He would teach restaurant owners how to cook chicken his way. In return, they would pay him a small fee for every piece sold. This idea was simple, but revolutionary. Today, we call it franchising. But back then, few people understood it. Still, Sanders decided to give it everything he had. He packed his old car with a pressure cooker, bags of spices, and his dream. Then he hit the road. He traveled city to city, knocking on doors of restaurants. He cooked chicken in their kitchens, serving it proudly. He explained the process, the pressure cooking, the seasoning. He promised it would bring them customers, but most owners shook their heads. Some laughed, some dismissed him. Some said it was impossible. One rejection became two. Two became 10. 10 became 100. And still he kept going. He was an old man by then, sleeping in his car, living on little money. Yet his determination was unshakable. He told himself, The next one might say yes. And finally, after more than 1,000 rejections, someone did. One restaurant owner tried the chicken and believed in the idea. That single yes changed everything. Soon customers loved the flavor. Other restaurants grew curious. Slowly, his recipe spread beyond one town, then one state, then the country. This was the birth of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Not from wealth, not from privilege, but from persistence and belief. Sanders turned rejection into opportunity. He transformed age into an advantage, showing patience and wisdom. At 62, when most people gave up on dreams, he was just beginning. Think about this for a moment. If he had quit at rejection number 100, KFC would not exist. If he had stopped after 500, no one would know his name. But because he kept going past 1,000 rejections, history changed. This part of his story teaches us a powerful lesson. Success does not depend on youth, luck, or timing alone. It depends on the ability to keep moving forward, no matter how many times life says no. Sanders' journey proves that belief in yourself is stronger than rejection. That persistence is more valuable than talent alone. And that sometimes you are only one yes away from changing your life. So when you face rejection, remember Sanders at 62. Remember, the man who built a global empire from the trunk of his old car. His story is proof that it is never too late to begin again. Let's now step into the moment when Sanders' persistence began to pay off. After that first yes, everything started to change. One restaurant used his recipe, and customers loved it. Then another joined, then another. What began as a single deal soon grew into a chain reaction. The chicken was different, crispy, juicy, and full of flavor. The pressure cooker made it fast, and the spices made it unforgettable. People couldn't stop talking about it. Restaurant owners saw opportunity, and Sanders' idea spread. By the time he turned 65, something extraordinary happened. A businessman noticed him and recognized the potential. This man didn't just see fried chicken. He saw a brand that could sweep across the nation. Together, they officially launched Kentucky Fried Chicken, or KFC. This was the birth of a fast food empire. Sanders became more than a cook. He became a symbol. He dressed in his iconic white suit and black string tie. He smiled proudly as the face of KFC. He traveled from city to city, sharing his chicken and his story. By the age of 73, KFC had more than 600 franchises. From a broke man living in his car, he became a global entrepreneur. It was one of the most remarkable turnarounds in business history. But success also brought new challenges. Running a large company was very different from running a cafe. Sanders cared deeply about quality and service. He wanted every piece of chicken to be perfect. But as KFC grew bigger, it became harder to maintain his standards. The company shifted focus to speed and profit. Some methods were changed, and the flavor was altered. Sanders felt heartbroken. The brand that carried his name no longer reflected his values. At 73, he made a big decision. In 1964, he sold KFC for $2 million. It was a huge fortune at the time. He could finally rest after years of struggle. Yet even after selling, he couldn't let go emotionally. He often said the food wasn't the same anymore. He regretted losing control, even as his face remained the logo. This stage of his journey is full of mixed emotions. On one hand, he had built a world-famous company. On the other, he felt he had lost the heart of what he created. But despite the regret, his success could not be denied. From poverty at 62 to a multimillionaire by 73. From rejections to 600 thriving franchises. His story became an inspiration worldwide. And the lesson here is powerful. Success often comes with trade-offs. Growth can mean losing control. We must decide what matters most: expansion or staying true to values. Sanders chose to grow, and while it brought regret, it also brought legacy. Today, KFC stands as one of the largest fast food chains in the world. But behind the global empire is the story of one man's relentless spirit, the man who proved that dreams can bloom even in later years. His white suit became a symbol of resilience, his face a reminder that it's never too late to begin again. This chapter reminds us that success is not always perfect. It may bring joy and regret together. But what defines us is the courage to keep going. And Sanders showed that courage in every chapter of his life. Now let's explore the final chapter of Colonel Sanders' life. Even after selling KFC, he never stopped working. He was not the type of man to retire quietly and disappear. Food was his passion, and people were his motivation. Though he no longer owned KFC, he remained its public face. He continued to wear his white suit and black tie with pride. His image was used in advertising, and people trusted him deeply. But Sanders wanted more than just fame. He wanted to cook, to serve, to create food that made people smile. So he opened another restaurant called Claudia Sanders Dinner House. He named it after his beloved wife, Claudia. It was his way of honoring love and continuing his craft. He cared about quality, taste, and treating customers with respect. This was not about building an empire anymore. It was about doing what he loved until the very end. As time passed, Sanders became an international symbol of resilience. He traveled to many countries to promote his chicken recipe. In every place he visited, people admired his energy. They respected his story, a man who found success late in life. To many, he became living proof that it is never too late to dream. Even as he grew older, his passion did not fade. He continued giving speeches, meeting fans, and inspiring people. At the age of 90 in 1980, Colonel Sanders passed away. His death saddened millions around the world. Newspapers wrote about his incredible journey from poverty to empire. People shared stories of meeting him or eating his food. Even those who never met him felt inspired by his life, because his story was not just about fried chicken. It was about hope, courage, and second chances. After his passing, KFC continued to grow globally. Today, it has more than 27,000 restaurants in 150 countries. His face remains one of the most recognizable logos worldwide. But his true legacy is not only in the food, it is in the lessons we can all take from his journey. Sanders showed that age is just a number. At 65, he was just beginning his greatest chapter. He showed that failure is not the end, but part of the process. He showed that persistence, passion, and belief create miracles. He also showed the power of love and humility. He named his last restaurant after his wife. He treated customers with kindness and respect. He valued quality over profit, passion over money. That is why his story still resonates today. Teachers share it to inspire students. Business coaches use it to explain persistence. Parents tell it to their children as a lesson in never giving up. Sanders became more than a businessman. He became a symbol of possibility, a symbol that no matter where you start, you can still rise. So the next time you see the KFC sign, remember the man behind it. Remember the boy who lost his father at 5, the teenager who ran away at 12, the adult who failed in 20 jobs, the man rejected 1,000 times, and the old man who finally built his dream at 65. Colonel Sanders left us more than chicken. He left us a legacy of faith, courage, and persistence. And that legacy continues to inspire millions around the world. So as we close this story, let's pause and reflect. Colonel Sanders' journey is more than business history. It is a reminder that success has no age limit. He proved that failure is not the end, but part of the path. He showed that persistence can carry us through rejection. He taught us that passion makes the hard work worthwhile. And most of all, he proved that belief in yourself is essential. At 65, when most people stop, he was just beginning. Within a decade, he built a global empire from one recipe. His life tells us it's never too late to learn or to grow. Maybe your dream feels far away. Maybe you faced rejection or disappointment. Remember Sanders. Remember that success might be just one more step ahead. Keep going, keep believing, and never give up. Ver.